Hello and welcome to the update on something which could really change the course of South Africa, and that is the municipal elections. So for those of you who don't know, every 5 years South Africa has their election for their federal parliament and all of our provincial parliaments. Those are decided by proportional representation, and the last one was in 2024. But to provide a bit of background, in 2021, we started to see some of the fractures in the ANC and why they may not hold power for very much longer. So in 2021, the municipal elections, the ANC was coming into it quite unpopular under President Cyril Ramaphosa. However, in every election, they still got a majority of a popular vote, majority of seats. They were still getting very easily across the line, and municipal elections, provincial elections, federal elections, all of them are proportional, so even then they were still managing consistent majorities. However, in November 2021, it was election day and results started to come in, and there was a huge shift away from the ANC. Now, traditionally, they do underperform at the local level as to what they do on federal and provincial level. However, this was the first time they had dipped below 50%, and that's when people started to think, oh, is it really time that the ANC is going to lose their hold on power? At this time, they controlled majority in the federal parliament, as well as the upper house in the federal parliament. They controlled most municipalities, and they controlled every provincial legislature except for one as a majority at the time. But that spelled a huge warning, and then you skip forward just to 2024, and they went down to 40%. They absolutely dipped down. That's a 17% swing from 2019, which was the last election before that. And there was a bit of a restructuring. So the sort of moderate, both the ANC and DA are sort of centrist. It's kind of left-right politics is a little bit hard to define in South Africa. But the DA, Democratic Alliance, they came second. They only had a small increase in the vote as a main opposition party, but then there's the MK, which was founded by former President Jacob Zuma, who is part of the ANC. They were quite popular in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and then a whole bunch of other parties. Eventually, coalition negotiations actually put the ANC and DA in a coalition, as well as some others. However, these two still look at each other as the opposing parties in South Africa. The DA, for about 2 decades now, has always been the second largest party in South Africa. So yeah, it's kind of been hard to see strong working in the coalition, but it seems to be getting done. However, I think a big concern is also the turnout, which went below 59%. That is extraordinarily low. So going into this election, it's basically the midterms for South Africa. It's taking place about 2.5 months after the last nationwide election, and 2.5 months before the next nationwide election. So what are we expecting to happen? Well, some polls have had the ANC and DA almost tied on nationwide voting. Some people do this for, some people change this, like how we think things are going to go at a municipal level in certain cities, because the DA does well in urban areas. I think the DA will make some gains. They've also ditched their leader. If you can see here before that, a guy called John Steenhuisen, very much from the conservative wing of the party. That didn't really help the DA that much. Now they've installed Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis, who is a lot more of a progressive figure, has a lot more sort of leftist economic sympathies. At least is campaigning more in that way. The ANC not really doing too strong at the moment, and the EFF, traditionally the third party in South Africa, they did get overtaken at the last general election by Jacob Zuma's new party, but the EFF, their leader Julius Malema, was recently sentenced to quite a bit of time in jail. That will, of course, probably be appealed, but it'll be interesting to see how they do without him, given he's basically been leader in some way or form for decades now, since the party was founded. There's also a few smaller parties like Action South Africa who, mostly seem to be former DA people. They seem to do well at municipal level for some reason. But let's go through a couple of city councils that we think are going to be close. How are we going to find that? Well, we're going to have to go all the way back to 2021 and look at the results of that election. So as we scroll all the way through here to hopefully find some information, we have to look what are the really big cities all over South Africa. So if we're first going to go to the Eastern Cape, this is a very strong ANC province. I think the idea is just maybe a little bit of a shift. Nelson Mandela Bay ended up, it was a DA-led coalition before the 2021 municipal elections. It narrowly flipped over to a very large ANC coalition. So I think this should definitely, Nelson Mandela Bay should definitely be one of the main cities that the DA is trying to flip. We're going to go past the sort of tier 2 municipalities, which are smaller ones. If we're looking at the Free State, Mangaung is the only metropolitan municipality. Now, the ANC holds a majority here. I think the thing is just, does the ANC lose control? I think so. They certainly lose their majority, and then if the EFF can't have a good ground game, which I think they might very much struggle with at this election, the DA plus Freedom Front Plus, which is a mostly sort of pro-Afrikaner party, could get over the line with maybe the support of some others. And if we go over to Gauteng, Gauteng is the largest province. It contains city of Johannesburg. Ekurhuleni is generally sort of like eastern Greater Johannesburg, and Tshwane is a lot further north. It's mostly like the area known as Pretoria falls within the city of Tshwane. So the DA do hold narrow majorities in the city of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, or at least they did at the last election. I think city of Johannesburg has changed. I don't know where exactly you can find out much information, but some of these coalition partners did defect over to the ANC-led coalition. Now, city of Johannesburg is probably going to be the most interesting mayoral election this time around. So, Helen Zille, who I believe is the person on the thumbnail of this video, who's on the inflatable boat, rowing through a very large pothole. If you don't know what I'm talking about, then I must be thinking about the wrong video. She's basically been going around rowing through potholes to point out how bad the potholes are, which, Helen Zille, she's had a lot of criticism. She's done a lot of things which has maybe not made a lot of people in a DA very happy. But, she seems to have a knack for campaigning in regards to local governance. So maybe the DA ends up as the largest party. I think I would probably bet on that at this point. And then, if Supportive Action, South Africa, and a few others. City of Johannesburg should flip. Ekurhuleni should stay with the DA. I think maybe that DA coalition will expand. And then Tshwane should maybe go a bit further towards the DA. Now, if we're going to go to KwaZulu-Natal, eThekwini is generally the area in which Durban and other areas sit. So, if we're looking at who's governing, you need 112 seats to win. The ANC, nowhere close. They align with the ABC? Okay. They align with a smaller party, so reality is, can a DA kick them out? Can the IFP align with the DA kick them out? But I think we're forgetting one thing, and that's in KwaZulu-Natal, maybe not as much in the urban area of Durban, but more of the province at large. Jacob Zuma's new party did very well, so we'll have to see how much that takes off the ANC, and then does the ANC even work with the DA then if the ANC loses so much ground? So if we're gonna scroll down, we have Limpopo doesn't really have any really large cities, neither does Mpumalanga, neither does the Northern Cape. A lot of Northern Cape is a little bit different, but those first two provinces very safe for the ANC. Northwest, again, not really any big cities we're looking at. I just thought it would be interesting to see the EFF doing quite well in some areas. This is a very good province for them. They regularly come second here, but it'll be interesting to see how they do now with, maybe the EFF not having so much of a vote. Now, this is the jewel in the crown for the DA, and that is the city of Cape Town. They have won again and again and again in the city, and they should be on course to win another majority fairly easily. There's still parts of Western Cape where there are ANC governments. It's interesting here. ECOSA, ANC, ECOSA, who are, yeah. It rings a bell. But yeah, generally the ANC doing quite well across that province. So yeah, generally, I think that ANC is going to struggle. The question is, what can the DA pick up? I think they need to make, they currently control one council in one of the municipal councils in Gauteng. They could walk out of this with all three. City of Cape Town just expand their margin. And then in places like Mangaung, in the Free State, or eThekwini in KwaZulu-Natal, I think they should focus on trying to gain as much as possible, even if those city councils won't flip. But thanks for joining, and we'll see what happens, because this election is just 6 months away.